What makes a war film unforgettable? Is it the chaos, the courage, or the haunting quiet that follows? Between the 1970s and 80s, filmmakers turned battlefields into mirrors for the human soul. These weren't just war stories, they were reckoning, glory, guilt, and survival. From jungles to deserts to claustrophobic submarines, these films redefined realism and raw emotion. Let's count down the 14 war masterpieces that didn't just show war, they made you feel everything. Number 1. Maz, 1970. Robert Altman's Maz. H turned the chaos of the Korean War into dark, biting comedy. It wasn't about glory, it was about survival through sarcasm. Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould played army surgeons who used humor to stay sane while patching up endless casualties. Altman's overlapping dialogue and handheld camera work gave the movie a messy human pulse. What made MASH revolutionary was its attitude. It mocked military order, authority, and the absurdity of trying to find logic in madness. The jokes weren't light, they were rebellion disguised as laughter. Critics called it anarchic, audiences called it brilliant. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes and even sparked one of television's most beloved shows. But beneath the comedy, it's a film about coping. The laughter hides exhaustion, and the chaos hides compassion. Mazich proved that war doesn't just test bravery, it tests sanity. And sometimes, the only way to stay human is to laugh at the madness. Number 2. Patton, 1970. Few war movies open like Patton with George C. Scott standing before a massive flag booming like a general from another world. The film, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner and co-written by Francis Ford Coppola, dives into the mind of General George S. Patton, a genius, a poet, and a man at war with himself. Patton isn't portrayed as a hero or villain. He's brilliant but egotistical, spiritual yet ruthless. Schaffner's sweeping battle scenes and Scott's commanding performance make you admire him and fear him at the same time. Every victory feels hollow, every defeat strangely noble. The movie dominated the Academy Awards, but what lingers is its complexity. It asks, can greatness and madness coexist? Patton isn't about patriotism, it's about obsession, ambition, and the human cost of glory. In a decade questioning authority, this general became both an icon and a warning. Number 3. Tora, 1970. Tora isn't a film of heroes and villains, it's a clockwork tragedy told from both sides. Directed jointly by Richard Fleischer, Toshio Masuda, and Kinji Fukasaku, it recreates the attack on Pearl Harbor with eerie precision and stunning authenticity. Rather than dramatize, it observes. The film shows Japanese strategy and American miscommunication unfolding like a slow-motion disaster. Every radio signal, every delay feels inevitable, and when the attack finally begins, it's terrifying for its realism, not spectacle. The filmmakers used real ships, real bases, and meticulous research. There's no emotional manipulation, just the cold rhythm of history turning. That restraint is what makes it powerful. Tora reminds viewers that great tragedies often come not from hatred, but from human error, and that's what makes them unforgettable. Number 4. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. A bridge too far aimed for epic and gothic. Richard Attenborough's star-studded retelling of Operation Market Garden turned military ambition into cinematic caution. With Sean Connery, Gene Hackman, and Michael Caine leading thousands of extras, it recreated one of World War II's boldest and most disastrous missions. Attenborough didn't sugarcoat the failure. The film's grand scope makes every misstep more painful: bad weather, broken communication, and costly operation. The cinematography is breathtaking, but the story hits like a gut punch. It's not about courage winning the day, it's about courage colliding with
General Browning.
Critics were divided at first, but time proved its power. A Bridge Too Far stands as one of the most realistic depictions of military breach ever filmed. It's about how one brilliant plan can turn into chaos and how even heroes can go one bridge too far. Number 5. The Deer Hunter, 1978. Michael Ciminos. The Deer Hunter begins in small-town America and ends in emotional ruin. Starring Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, and Meryl Streep, it follows friends whose lives unravel after Vietnam. The contrast between their joyful pre-war lives and the trauma that follows is devastating. Cimino builds tension slowly. The long wedding sequence draws you into their world before tearing it apart. The haunting game of fate scenes became cinematic legend not for shock, but for what they say about loss, loyalty, and survival. When it premiered, audiences were stunned. It won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, and divided critics for its intensity. But its real triumph lies in its honesty. The Deer Hunter isn't about winning, it's about what's left of people after the fight is over. It's not war that destroys them, it's memory. Number 6, Apocalypse Now, 1979. It's not just a movie, it's a descent into madness. Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now took Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and hurled it into the flaming heart of the Vietnam War. What emerged wasn't a war film. It was a fever dream one that nearly destroyed the human crew while redefining what cinema could be. Martin Sheen plays Captain Willett, a soldier sent upriver to terminate Colonel Kurtz, the rogue officer played by Marlon Brando. But as Willard travels deeper into the jungle, the mission dissolves into chaos, hallucination, and existential dread. Coppola famously said, "My film is not about Vietnam, it is Vietnam." And watching it, you believe him. The production itself was legendary for its near collapse. Typhoons destroyed sets, Sheen suffered a heart attack, and Brando arrived overweight and unprepared. Yet somehow, that very disorder became the movie's pulse. The jungles of the Philippines became a metaphor for human insanity. Helicopters roared to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. Villages burned, and soldiers lost their minds in the blinding sun. When Apocalypse Now premiered, audiences didn't know what hit them. It wasn't patriotic, it wasn't political. It was pure chaos, poetic, terrifying, and hypnotic. Critics eventually hailed it as one of the greatest films ever made, because more than any movie before or since, it captured what war really feels like when logic and morality collapse into smoke. It's not just cinema, it's a nightmare you can't wake up from. Number 7, The Last Valley, 1971. Buried beneath the blockbusters of the 70s lies a forgotten gem. The Last Valley, a haunting tale set during the 30 Years' War. Directed by James Clavell, it's part historical epic, part philosophical allegory. And while it never achieved the fame of its contemporaries, it stands out as one of the decade's most quietly profound war films. The story follows a teacher, played by Omar Sharif, who stumbles upon a remote mountain valley untouched by war. There, he encounters a mercenary captain, played by Michael Caine, who sees the valley as a refuge from endless bloodshed. Together, they form an uneasy truce, one man seeking peace through learning, the other through survival. But as outsiders arrive, the fragile harmony begins to crack. Clavell uses war not as spectacle, but as backdrop for moral decay. The film's snowy landscapes, filmed in the Austrian Alps, give it a dreamlike beauty that contrasts brutally with the darkness of human nature. There are no heroes here, just tired souls clinging to hope in a world gone mad. Though overlooked in its time, The Last Valley has aged like fine wine. It's introspective, beautifully shot, and quietly devastating. It reminds us that war isn't just fought on battlefields, it's fought inside people, in their desperation to find meaning when the world has none left. Number 8, Gallipoli, 1981. Before Mel Gibson was an icon, he was a young Australian actor running barefoot across the deserts of Gallipoli, a film that stripped war of glamour and replaced it with innocence lost. Directed by Peter Weir, it's both a coming-of-age story and a national reckoning. The movie follows 2 young runners, Archie and Frank, who enlist in the Australian Army during the First World War. They dream of adventure and glory, but what awaits them in the trenches of Gallipoli is confusion, exhaustion, and bureaucratic tragedy. The film's pacing mirrors their transformation from hopeful athletes sprinting through open fields to soldiers trapped in a nightmare of orders gone wrong. Peter Weir's direction is lyrical, almost painterly. The early scenes glow with golden sunlight, capturing the spirit of youth. By the end, the colors fade to dust and smoke. No music swells for the final scene, just silence and disbelief. It's a gut punch that leaves you staring at the screen, hollow. Gallipoli wasn't just a war film, it was a mirror held up to Australia's national identity. It sparked discussion, reflection, even anger. And decades later, it still feels painfully relevant. It's not about heroes dying for glory. It's about young men running full speed toward dreams that were never real to begin with. Number 9, Das Boot, 1982. Few films have captured claustrophobia like Das Boot. Directed by Wolfgang Petersen, this German masterpiece takes place almost entirely inside a World War II submarine, and yet it's one of the most gripping war stories ever told. Forget explosions, aerial dogfights. This is a story about pressure, the physical kind and the psychological kind. A young war correspondent joins a U-boat crew as they patrol the Atlantic, hunted from above, trapped below. The walls sweat, the air grows thin, and every sound could mean death. Petersen turns every creak and drip into a drumbeat of dread. What's remarkable is how human it feels. The crew jokes, smokes, sings, and fights boredom as much as the enemy. You start to view them not as villains or heroes, but as the dark men just trying to make it home. The captain, played by Jürgen Prochnow, carries the quiet authority of someone who's seen too much and says little. Shot in tight spaces with handheld cameras, Das Boot feels almost documentary-like. The realism is suffocating, the tension constant. When the submarine finally surfaces after a harrowing battle, you can almost feel yourself gasping for air. It's not a story of triumph, it's a story of endurance. And in its relentless focus on the human side of war, it achieves something extraordinary. It makes you feel empathy in a place where none should exist. Number 10, The Killing Fields, 1984. War doesn't always end when the shooting stops. In The Killing Fields, it turns into something even more horrifying silence. Directed by Roland Joffé, this film tells the true story of two journalists caught in the chaos of Cambodia's collapse in the 1970s. It's part war film, part survival story, and entirely unforgettable. Sam Waterston plays Sidney Schanberg, an American reporter covering the conflict, while Hein Gore delivers an Oscar-winning performance as Dick Pran, his Cambodian interpreter and friend. When their country falls to the Khmer Rouge regime, Schanberg escapes, but Pran is left behind, forced to endure years of brutality and starvation in the labor camps. What makes The Killing Fields so powerful isn't just its realism, it's its humanity. The film doesn't flinch from showing the cost of ideology and power, but it also celebrates resilience. Dith Pran's quiet courage, his will to survive, becomes the heartbeat of the film. Shot on location in Thailand, the visuals are stunning yet unbearable. The lush beauty of the land contrasts sharply with the horror unfolding upon it. By the time the two friends reunite, you're left drained but grateful. This isn't a film about battles, it's about endurance, compassion, and the long shadow of conflict. The Killing Fields doesn't just show what war destroys, it shows what it can. The human spirit. Number 11. Come and See, 1985. Some films show war. Come and See makes you feel it deep in your bones where it hurts the most. Directed by Ilham Klimov, this Soviet masterpiece isn't entertainment. It's an experience so harrowing, so visceral, that many viewers can't watch it twice. And yet, it's one of the most essential war films ever made. The story follows a Belarusian boy named Flyora who joins the resistance during World War II. At first, he's wide-eyed and eager, proud to wear a uniform, but as he travels through burned villages and silent forests littered with ruin, his innocence evaporates. His face young, hopeful, then hollow as the movie's timeline. By the end, he's aged decades without ever leaving childhood. Klimov filmed in harsh conditions, using real ammunition and long takes that blur the line between acting and reality. The sound design alone, roaring engines, buzzing flies, screaming silence, builds unbearable tension. The result is hypnotic and horrifying. Every frame feels like it's trembling under the weight of memory. What makes Come and See unforgettable isn't its brutality, but its honesty. It refuses to turn away. There's no glory, no victory, only the shattered pieces of humanity left behind. Decades later, it still stands as one of cinema's rawest indictments of war's psychological toll. You don't watch it, you survive it. Number 12, Platoon, 1986. Before Oliver Stone made Platoon, war movies were about stories told after the fact. This one came from someone who lived it. Stone, a Vietnam veteran himself, didn't just direct the film, he exercised it. What emerged was a blistering, unforgettable portrait of moral chaos. Charlie Sheen stars as Chris Taylor, a young soldier who volunteers for combat, only to find himself trapped between two sergeants. One idealistic Willem Dafoe, the other brutal Tom Berenger. The battle between them becomes a symbol for the soul of every soldier caught between duty, fear, and conscience. What makes Platoon extraordinary is its authenticity. The cast lived in jungle conditions before filming, carrying real gear and sleeping in the mud. Stone shot in the Philippines to capture the claustrophobic density of Vietnam's terrain. The result? A film that doesn't feel staged, it feels remembered. You can almost smell the sweat and rain. It won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, but its legacy runs deeper. Platoon changed how people talked about Vietnam. It stripped away politics and turned the focus inward on confusion, loyalty, and guilt. By the end, when Chris rises out of the smoke, you realize the real battle wasn't against the enemy. It was against himself. Number 13, Full Metal Jacket, 1987. Only Stanley Kubrick could make boot camp feel like psychological warfare. Full Metal Jacket is part horror, part satire, and entirely unforgettable. It begins not on the battlefield, but in a training camp where young men are broken down and rebuilt into soldiers if they survive the process. The first half is dominated by R. Lee Ermey's unforgettable performance as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, whose insults hit harder than bullets. Every line he delivers is a weaponized rhythm, cruel, comedic, and hypnotic. But beneath the laughter, Kubrick reveals the transformation of identity itself. These recruits aren't being trained to fight. They're being stripped of everything human. Then, without warning, the film shifts to Vietnam. Suddenly, we're in a surreal, mechanized nightmare neon fire, broken cities, journalists cracking jokes to survive. Through Private Joker's cynical eyes, we see how humor becomes a shield against horror. The tone stays detached, clinical, almost robotic, and that's exactly Kubrick's point. Unlike most war films, Full Metal Jacket doesn't aim for tears or triumph. It's cold, detached, and terrifyingly logical. It shows a world where desensitization is survival, and empathy is the first casualty. The haunting chant that ends the movie Mickey Mouse Club isn't irony. It's tragedy. It's what happens when innocence learns to march. Number 14, Heartbreak Ridge, 1986. If most war films of the 80s were about disillusionment, Heartbreak Ridge brought back the old-school grit with a twist. Directed by and starring Clint Eastwood, it follows Gunnery Sergeant Tom Highway, an aging Marine whose glory days are long behind him. But when he's assigned to train a group of undisciplined recruits, he gets one last shot at redemption. On the surface, it's a rough-edged action movie, but underneath, it's about change, personal and institutional. Highway is a relic, a man from another era trying to adapt to a new kind of military. His recruits are rebellious, sarcastic, and lazy. The comedy in their clash feels organic, but it hides a deeper message. Experience versus modernity. Toughness versus empathy. Eastwood delivers one of his most underrated performances. He's gruff, but never cartoonish, strict, but strangely tender. The dialogue crackles with dry humor and the authentic. When the team finally faces real conflict, the payoff isn't about victory, it's about unity. Heartbreak Ridge doesn't try to reinvent the war genre. It celebrates resilience and mentorship, showing that even the most hardened soldier can still evolve. It's Eastwood's salute to discipline, loyalty, and the messy humanity that exists beneath the uniform. Sometimes toughness isn't about shouting, it's about caring enough to lead. From the chaos of Vietnam to the frozen silence of submarines, these 14 films didn't just depict war, they dissected it. They showed courage, confusion, and the thin line between both. Each one forced audiences to look beyond the explosions and see the people left standing or broken. So which of these classics shook you the most? Drop your thoughts below, subscribe for more cinematic deep dives, and remember, history may fade, but the stories that define us never do.